Brilliance Audio presents Securing Jane, a Seal of Protection Legacy Series Novella by Susan Stoker, performed by Savannah Peachwood. Jane Hamilton did her best not to get her hopes up. It was almost sad how excited she was for the morning mail run. After all, it was her normal routine, and she'd been working on the naval base for 18 years now. Ever since her ex-husband came home one day and told her he'd met someone else and was filing for divorce. It had cut deep. Jane had thought she'd be with Jake forever. They'd been high school sweethearts, and she'd done everything in her power to support him when he joined the Navy at age 18. But just like that, after over a decade of marriage, he'd up and left her to raise their 8-year-old daughter by herself. He'd grudgingly sent money every month, only because the courts said he had to, until she'd turned 18, and Jane hadn't heard from him since. She'd gotten a contractor job on the base in the mail room, and had worked her way up over the last 2 decades to where she was now. She managed about 10 employees, and was responsible for distributing the mail throughout the base. But even though she was the boss now, she always, without fail, walked through her building, hand-delivering mail each morning. For one, it got her out of her office. She enjoyed talking to the other contractors who worked in the building and getting to know the sailors as well. But for the last year and a half, she'd also kept up her routine because of him. Storm North. She'd literally stopped in her tracks the first time she'd seen him. He'd apparently been working at the base for a while, but had just been given an office in the same building where Jane worked, and just his name was enough to make her sigh. Storm North. It was so masculine, the perfect name for one of the heroes in the romance books she loved to read. She had the worst crush on the man, which felt a little ridiculous at her age. She was 51, way past the age of mindless hookups. But that didn't mean her libido was dead. And that fateful day it had roared to life at just the sight of him. Storm was a few inches taller than her own 5'7", but his commanding presence made his trim body seem larger than life. His close-cropped chestnut hair, distinguished silver at the temples, made his watchful hazel eyes stand out even more than they did already. Everything about him radiated strength and vitality. He was serious most of the time, which didn't surprise her because he had a lot of responsibility. He was in charge of several SEAL teams and took his job very seriously, which she admired. But Jane loved being able to make him smile, even if it was just for a moment, as she said good morning, handed him a package, or joked about this or that. She lived for those morning mail runs when she could see Storm. Her daughter, Rose, whose relationship with Jane was tenuous at best, would say she was being ridiculous, that someone as important as Storm would never look twice at a lowly mail clerk such as her. Still, Jane couldn't help but fantasize about him, fantasize that one day he'd see her, truly see her, and wonder why he hadn't asked her out. But Jane didn't actually think that would ever happen. She just wasn't his type. Not that she really knew him at all, except that he used to be a SEAL himself. But she assumed he'd prefer someone beautiful, slender. He was so good-looking and in shape, and she wasn't. Jane didn't make a habit of putting herself down, but she didn't like to work out, and she enjoyed a good glass of wine and a slice of pecan pie a bit too much. Jane had also had an extremely tough time after her divorce and was leery about getting too close to anyone again. She could be friendly and outgoing at work, but put her in a social situation and she clammed up. Storm was probably the life of the party, with no problem talking to anyone and everyone. He was genuinely nice, despite his seemingly gruff exterior. She was sure Storm had to have a girlfriend, though he wasn't married as far as Jane knew. She constantly checked out his left hand for a ring,